So make it in Brixton is the sort of campaign manifestation for the Creative Enterprise Zone, and it's all about showcasing and supporting creatives of all kinds and at all stages of their career. So if we could just start by maybe getting a brief précis of how Phil Dunn gets to where Phil Dunn is now.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'll try. The brevity is the hard part. For me, anyway. I'm sure other people are very good at that. I've always played with filmmaking ever since I was a kid. I made films with my cousins. We used to make sort of, James Bond style movies together in our summers, and that was really fun. I always had this feeling though that whatever you had to do for a living would have to be far more serious and more sort of important and grown up than that. So I actually studied medicine initially at university at Imperial College in London. That was my first time when I came to London from Cambridge, where I was born, and it was great. I did 2 years of it, but I didn't quite pass the exams at the end of the second year, and sort of made me think, hang on, is this really what I want? And realised it's not. It's an amazing. I went for it because it was like, what a noble, incredible profession, and it is. But actually, I realised this isn't. Although it is a brilliant thing, it isn't actually what I really want. And so I went. I actually did some work for a church for a year, and started doing some video stuff for them. That's when I started playing around with their video. They had a video department, like some equipment, and so I just basically just used all of that for a year, messed around with it, did lots of stuff with students in the area, and we would put on events. And then so that kind of got me more and more into it, and I started learning about editing and just by playing with it. And then I went up to Durham University to try another degree this time, and that was theology, because for me, I've always thought too deeply and too much about everything, and so theology was kind of like, wow, you can actually study that kind of stuff as a subject, where it's like the stuff that throughout time has always boggled the minds of man, and what does God and the universe and the meaning of life and religion and all these huge things that actually hold sway over human history and people. And so I went and studied that, which I loved, and I thought, I didn't realize that education could be like that. And then but the film thing kept growing, and so during that time when I was up there, I took some advice from a director and I said, what do I need to, if I want to get into filmmaking, I'm quite enjoying it, do I need to do a film course or something like that? And he was like, no, I don't think so. You just end up learning somebody else's techniques rather than finding your own palette, which I thought, I'm sure other people might give different advice, but for me, that was the right advice. And he said, look, just get out there and practice as much as possible, watch lots of films. So I bought a camera as a student on the credit card that I'd got, because I'd worked for a year. I got quite good credit on it, so I spent the entire credit card, $3,000, on a camera. It was I didn't realize how long I'd spend paying it off, but I did get the camera, and that was sort of the best and worst thing I'd ever done. So I'd spent about two years paying it off on my credit card, which was just the worst way to do it. But I had a camera, and then I started making stuff, and for my dissertation up there, I made a short film which was actually based on a poetry book in the Bible called the Song of Songs. It was actually basically erotic love poetry, but this wasn't a direct, it was more of an allegorical exploration of the themes in there, which were about relationship, about connection between human beings. So I didn't go for the porn film. Which would have been really interesting. I think I wasn't quite brave enough, but I made it, and on a train between London and Cambridge, you managed as a student, sort of beg, borrowed, and you do puppy eyes as a student, you get away with stuff. So we got onto a train, got a whole carriage of a train for a weekend, and filmed on it and made a short film. And it was pretty terrible, but it was great. I gave that as my dissertation. Thank you very much. That's my my wife and my coffee. Georgie. So I made that, and that for me I then managed to show it to some friends in a small cinema in Durham, and just that whole experience of it just really sold it for me. I was like, I just loved it. The just working with people like that, this community of people, actors, all working together on the same idea, all getting, and the writing of it in the first place, I loved the production, everything about it. I was like, wow, this is really, flicking my switches, and so that kind of tied me into it. And because I had the camera, people started asking me to film stuff, and so I started filming stuff for people. And then they said they would pay me, and so I did some weddings, and then did some stuff for companies. And then, so that's when my production company, which is a very, it's a production company, but it's basically me and some other freelancers that do stuff for people, set up and started doing sort of corporate videos, and they sort of did quite, made some money out of them, and made a business out of them. And I did that for about 10 years, and then got to a point where I was like, okay, this is going really well, and I could become like Mr. Corporate Video, but everything about that was making me feel ill. So I thought, I remembered, actually I really enjoyed that whole thing of telling a story and working with other people in that way, and that's when I came back and wrote and made Box Office Smash, rather audacious title for something that's quite an inane, sort of mundane film, but and very abstract. But that for me was just like, I've got to do this, or I'll actually think I'll go mad and become a sort of cardboard cutout of myself. And so it was for me, a really important thing. So yeah, and that then sort of launched me more back into like, right, yeah, I really want to do this again, and I'm going to go after it, whether, whatever happens, and you sort of get to that point where you sort of, right, I'm going to put my eggs in this basket, actually, because it's I just have to, not because it's going to make me money, because it's probably not going to make me that much money, or as well as I might have been, or but just because I just know I have to, I really want to. So that's kind of where I got to today. How was that?
that was really good. So I don't. You said that you've spent too much time thinking far too deeply about things. I don't think that is actually possible. It's not. It's you can't actually do that. But I think what really strikes me there is a lot of us in this kind of world, we end up thinking that we have to pursue proper careers in very large inverted commas. And there are routes through to doing actually what not just we want to do, but that actually we're probably better at doing. That aren't sort of formal education and those kind of things. But it's quite tough sometimes, isn't it, to start on a route? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it was you know what, it was. I'm not just saying this because I live in Brixton, but it was a David Bowie quote that I heard. That there's an interview that he did where he basically says, he's just so great. It's like, never work for other people in what you do. Like, don't play to the crowd, or something he said. Because I think generally you make your worst work when you do it for other people. And I remember I saw that, and it just rocked me, because at that point I built a production company that was doing corporate videos, some fashion stuff, which I still have. I still have that kind of. I now see it as on the side, although it's not. It is, is my main business, but I'm hoping it will not be. but yeah, I felt like I think that's what I've been doing for 10 years. I've basically been making stuff for other people, and every single project I do, I always think, oh yeah, I can really. And at the end of it, I look at what we've come up with, and I'm like, it's great. And they're like, oh, we love it. But you sort of have that feeling like, I'm not sure they would know whether it was amazing or not. And I certainly don't feel like this is my best work. And when do I get to do that? So suddenly, you go off and do your own thing. You discover, you start to be able to actually do really good or work that you're into. And then what's been surprising for me is to see, the reaction and people respond to it, which has been so encouraging.
So Box Office Smash ended up getting actually living up to its kind of slightly parallel naming, didn't it? And got lots of awards, and did did the kind of the festival circuit, and
yeah.
So how does that work when you make a film, when you make a short as a sort of a, for want of a better word, as an outsider, someone that isn't part of that world? How does one step lead to another?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I felt like. And I think, you know, an outsider is the right word, I think, because weirdly, you know, having done the production company and done it on my own kind of thing, one-man band, and then built up and got a team of freelancers, I've done all that kind of outside of the industry. So yeah, that's been part of the thing. It's like, right, you're going to make a film. So now it's kind of trying to get back into the film industry or something, or do I need to? That's kind of the question at the moment still. And what's exciting is at the moment, you know, like film festivals in the last few years, I don't know exactly how many years, but they're much more easy to enter. That, you know, Film Freeway is this online sort of film festival database that you can be part of, that helps you submit your film. So you put everything onto one thing on there, and then from there you can just click on a film festival and pay a submission fee, or some of them aren't, you know, have no fee, and it will be submitted. And it's really easy once you've loaded on all your information. So stuff like that makes it so much easier. And that was basically what I thought with Box Office Smash. I thought, right, I'm going to try this whole process out. I'm going to do the whole thing really well from start to finish. So apply everything that I've learned, and then also try out a load of things and read lots of forums and all that stuff. So I wrote and made it and storyboarded it, you know, did everything all the way through, you know, made the set myself, created the set, did everything, cast, you know, actors, did auditions, filmed it, edited it, you know, soundtrack, everything. And then it got to the film festival thing, and I looked in the Film Freeway, and yeah, I just loaded it all on there and just thought, well, you know, I actually used some of the, you know, profits from corporate video stuff to like use on some of the submission fees, and also just found as well, you can just search like free, which ones are free. So first of all, just submit it to all those, and then submit it to other ones that sounded exciting, or the fees were quite low, or where they did a deal. And that's that was really surprising when the first one came back, and it'd been selected somewhere in Ireland, actually, in a festival called Disappear Here Festival. And I thought, I hope that's not sort of, you know, doesn't mean, you know, I hope that's not ominous in any way. But yeah, that was just so exciting. I was like, what? Someone's watched my film and actually thinks it's slightly better than other people's, enough to actually put it, you know, like, what? And that was a real live film festival. So, and then it started getting selected other places, and then it won an award somewhere, and I was like, what is going on? This is, because I was just like, if it gets selected anywhere, that'd be so amazing, you know. And then for it to get nominated some places, I was like over the moon. And all my sort of, you know, I was boring everyone on Facebook or Instagram with like posts of me going, I can't believe it, wow. And then it kept doing better. So yeah, it won these. So and the thing is now is like, I'm still an outsider, so I've still got to figure out, oh, okay, I've got 14 awards, and I'm kind of like, when's BFI going to come knocking? Or, you know, when's someone going to go, hey kid, you got the stuff, like, you know, come and make movies with us, you know. That's not happened yet. So it's like, okay, done one, got that under my, so I think my strategy is basically, right, I'm going to make another one, which I've done, and then another one, and then just keep trying to make them and scrape and scrabble to figure out how to, because I think that that's the bit that I know, even though it's scary. And then yeah, I'm going to some networking meetings with the BFI, or trying to go and getting to film festivals when I can, and trying to meet people and seeing what happens. And I think everyone's trying to get somewhere with it. So I think the best thing is to make good work, you know, and hopefully that will speak for itself as you build up a stronger body of work that you can really stand by and say, yeah, that's me, you know, that's actually what I'm about. So
it's the kind of the power of autonomous action. And you know, being able to maybe separate yourself from results.
Yes.
Kind of just doing something, and the act of doing something leads to the next thing, which leads to the next thing, which leads to the next thing.
Yeah,
okay, it's really interesting, because I think it's so daunting for for people when they don't know how things work.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a lot of people that do know how it works, and they've got access to the right ears, the right commissioners, the right funding, and all of that kind of thing. But it's easy to not know where to start. But the important thing is to start.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I think that can be a real paralyzer for people. They think, oh, I don't know where to start, and so they just get. And I've been in that position where you end up not really doing anything. You think, well, how can I? Because I don't, and it becomes about. And actually, it's amazing just the power of just going, what if I just did it?
Yeah.
And just start doing it. And you're like, suddenly, it's amazing how actually until then that avenue in your brain wasn't open. You suddenly go, oh yeah, I could just start doing it. But and it's amazing how the power of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you track it back,
what's that?
When you track it back, you can see how that route is really logical. But until you've actually travelled, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. I'm interested because obviously that the Brixton Design Trail played a kind of a small part in the story of that, and I'm just interested because it was obviously a really lovely thing to do, and people working on the trail, it was amazing, and people, punters seemed to enjoy it, and it kind of landed quite well. But I'm just really interested what it was like from your perspective. What you got out of that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I thought I loved it because it like, for, at a very base level for me, it did make me feel less alone, as someone, who has this, desire to make stuff, and is trying to dare to do that, which is a scary thing to be doing, and living more by these things that come into your head, and then making them. And so to see a celebration of other creatives around Brixton, all these things, I took my wife is an artist as well, and we took our kids to some of the things, that courtyard that's out the back near the railway arches, where there was all the sort of different, Sarah had done slogans on the walls and all sorts of great graphic design, and we went to the place in the arches where there was some skateboards had been decorated in different ways, and it was just like, see, we're not, I think because as well, we as parents, we sort of think they go to a school and that other parents there aren't doing this kind of thing, and we often struggle to explain what we're up to half the time, and they kind of love it, but they're also like, what are you doing? So to actually say, look, there's other people that actually do this stuff, are trying to make beautiful things and trying to make the world actually better through beautiful things and colors and words, and through exploring darkness and through exploring light, and through that was, so for me, that was, for us all, it was just so encouraging, and made me feel more like, oh yeah, this is something, Brixton is somewhere where I feel I can do what it is I want to do, and be more myself, having felt never fitted in here, there, whatever. It just felt, because Brixton is very much a kind of everything goes environment, which is what I've always loved about it. And the design trail felt like that was a celebration of that, lots of different backgrounds. So yeah, I think that was the main thing, and connecting up, with the other people around, and seeing that people can get enthusiastic about your work, and just how much that can help, paying it forward as well, and
that's amazing. So you got a new film out?
Yes, about. It's very difficult to talk about.
Your film titling is is quite.
Let's talk about.
So what is about?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of part of it. I think so one of my other things is writing poetry, and that's where Box Office Smash came from, as a play on words. The double entendre kind of thing of like, what is it? What could that mean if it's not like Box Office Smash at the cinema? And about was the same thing with the title, and it kind of unlocks in a way some of what we're trying to do in the film, which is, it's looking at that word and the various different meanings of it. One of it came from just simply, it's a taxi ride home, and the word Uber in German, it means, getting around, I think, and so there's a sense of about in that. I was trying to think of a word that could sort of touch on that. We couldn't say Uber in the film. But then more kind of importantly, it's looking at this conversation in the back of the car, and who has the full picture between these two women and this person that they know in common. And it turns out that they have a very different idea of who the host of this party is that they've just been to. And it's that thing of like, well, who has the full picture? That's the tagline for the film, because they both know him and they both have experience of him, and yet it's very different. So they're talking about this guy, and yet their views about him are very different. But it's also this, as talking about it. So the guy I wrote this one with a guy called Theodore Brunn, who's a friend of mine. He's a novelist, and so wanted to, he's interested in writing for screen as well. So I thought, well, let's write one together. And so it was kind of, it's also sort of looking at kind of Generation X, because the people in the car are that sort of age where they're sort of post-boomer, pre-woker. I don't know what the right terms are, but where there's we've been brought up one way, but we've also learned a whole new way through technology and all the stuff that's happened. And as a result, there's a lot of people who you can go one way or another. Are you, like we talked about actually, are you going to go the more kind of proper route of a good, like a proper job, or are you going to diverge and do something that's more you? And the older generation, the boomers, would say, well, you don't do that. You just get a job and you have to make ends meet, and you can't just go chasing your dreams. And the wokers are like, no, man, no oppression. We're going to break out of it all. And Generation X is somewhere between the two, going, well, I think I want to live my dreams, but I really need to, do it. And so there is something in that as well. Like we're looking at developing it further actually now, because it's done quite well. We're looking at making it maybe into something longer, and it's exploring that more. That kind of not quite being short as a result. So you can get this guy who one person knows as, oh, he's like this, and then the other person knows him as something completely different. And that's because he's not fully resolved yet in his life. And sometimes we need, in order to we need everyone to sort of be able to help us get the full picture of ourselves and each other. So, again, quite a convoluted reply there, but does that help?
Yeah, no, that really does. Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you both for a second. I'm having a technology issue. So clearly I'm Generation X. I need to upgrade my Zoom in order to continue the conversation.
Okay. So are you gonna battle with that, or do we need to reconvene on a different call?
It's your decision, in the sense of I can set up something from the Hello at Brixton. I think it'll be easier.
Okay, well, look, we've got 9 minutes, so if you can do that, then I'll carry on talking to Phil, because I'm really interested in, because you've mentioned that you're a poet as well, and that and this kind of thing of like sort of poetry and making shorts as well. It reminded me of Raymond Carver.
Oh yeah,
and he I don't know whether you're familiar with him.
Well, rings a bell. Yeah, God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was a poet. He was a poet and a writer of short stories.
Right.
And I'm just interested in your whether these film shorts are do you see them as a means to an end, or is the art in the short form for you?
Oh yeah. No, I yeah, good question. I do see them. There's like short films definitely have their own thing, and that, if I didn't know that completely when I started, making box office smash, I really realized it by the end of it. The thing is, at the moment so far, like box office smash, about both of those have been ideas that could only be short films in that form, and so as a result, they therefore they have to be their own art form. They had to be. I had to make them. I didn't know what they were. Had to make them. Didn't know how long box office smash would be. Turned out it's a short film. So to me that proves that the short film format serves. It has its own thing, and certainly you can do something in a short film that you can't do in feature films. You can deliver a punch in a short film that leave people reeling for a few days, in a much more higher impact, or because it's short, because they then are like, that's all I got given was that. What I'm going to think about, whereas a feature film can almost try and do it all for you, and you're kind of delivered at the end out of the cinema into this new world that you've experienced, and that's great. But short films definitely, and that's what I've going to festivals or watching festivals online as it has been this year, like seeing more and more shorts, and you just realise, gosh, you couldn't do that in a feature, but that's actually that's better for being short. And poems play into that completely, because poems are all about, can be again about finding finding that choice word or that choice turn of phrase that just, what is it I'm trying to say, just hits it, in that way, or just and sort of chiseling down to that. Okay, I'm going to say those 3 words, and that's going to express this whole thing I've been thinking about for 5 days. And a short film's like that as well. So they're very similar in that way.
Yeah, but by the same token, you can also see a path where that sort of the story you kind of intimate in about. You can imagine that kind of, then that could turn into like 12 hours of Netflix where we investigate, sort of the twin experience of this mystery character or something. But it might, there's that, I don't know whether it's apocryphal or not, but that story about Hemingway being challenged to write a story that could make you cry in 5 words.
Oh yes.
Have you heard that one? And
I've heard of it.
It's something like, for sale baby shoes unused.
Oh. Yeah. Gosh. Very good. Yeah. That's it though, isn't it? I think nowadays as well, all the more the ability to be able to deliver something that has a resonance for people in a short space of time without rushing, that actually says something meaningful, that's quite a thing. That's quite an amazing gift, and very needed. People haven't got much time, so if you can do something that really makes them go, whoa, hang on, okay, or just makes them look at something in a different way as a result, I think those are the things that do help change the world. Like, I believe that stuff, that that it does help people start to recognize stuff and become more awake and more engage with other people in more real and human ways, and engage with the world in more real and human ways. So I'm like, more I get into it, I'm more like, this is all I'm going to do. And that keeps scaring me all the time, because it's like, but I really don't know how to make the money that I'm supposed to make out of it, but I've got to do this, because it's like the only thing that makes any sense, particularly in the world that we're living in now.
Yeah. So, Margarita, you had way more intellectual and filmic than mine about.
Had chats with Dee about your movie, obviously, and we both were reminded of Jim Jarmusch's Nights on Earth. It's inevitable. It's a really strong reference, and is it an inspiration? I mean, it's almost as if it's a kind of Brixton chapter of Nights on Earth, and it talks about Brixton in another way that other people might have done. So it's interesting to know both how you were inspired by that, but also how important is Brixton to you as a filmmaker.
Actually, you know what? So Jim Jarmusch's I don't think that I've watched that for a very long time, if at all. But someone else has also said, this is so like that. Like, you might, and I haven't seen it, I don't think, unless it was a very long time ago. I've watched the trailer recently, and it's like on the list to watch because of that. So actually, for me, I wonder, I don't know if it's the same for him, but for me, one of the main inspirations was the name has just suddenly left my head, but Taxi Driver, obviously, Taxi Driver by De Niro. Just for me, it was the kind of those late night streets, the sort of lights, sort of dark goings on, the jazz sort of vibe, late night jazz vibes of the streets, and so for me, that's kind of what I looked at a lot when sort of looking at the visual treatment of it and directing it. So yeah, I need to watch that film. But yeah, and Brixton for me just kind of, you know, when you hear the kind of in Taxi Driver, and he's talking about the streets and all the people are out at night and all the things that are going on, and you know, Brixton can feel like that. Like at night, you drive down Cold Harbour Lane, and there's people having some of the best nights of their lives, and there's people having some of the worst nights of their lives, and everything in between. And there's all this. I wanted some of that to be in the film. That feeling of like, and in a way, yeah, it kind of captures. It's a perfect backdrop to the sort of ambiguity of the film, which is, you know, is this a good? Is there something good going on here? Is there something bad? Or what's happening? And I think Brixton has that feeling of anything can happen. And I've actually only ever had great experiences, had great times out. I've met people in Brixton, had a good time, but I know that other people haven't. And I know historically it's had, you know, people, there's been, you know, and I know that there are dark goings on down the streets because, you know, people come and take crack out the side of my front door at night.
Mine too.
And I have to try and explain that to my children. You know, it's like, so crack is a, you know, it's like, so, yeah, that was, I mean, that's, and I just thought, well, that's as cinematic as anything in Taxi Driver. And that's why I felt like it was just the perfect place to be shooting a short and trying to sort of reference this, so that if you look at Taxi Driver again, you'll see that some bit of visual references, like there's the windscreen wiper at one point and stuff like that. We tried to sort of just say, you know, hello, this is something we've watched.
Yeah, and it's, as you said before, it is about the forming and the talking of relationships and connections between people, and how these are both known and unknown to us. You know, we never really fully grasp what a relationship is because it's always outside ourselves. And I found this also very interesting because I know this is just a short film, but it seemed to me that it gave quite a strong view of women, in a sense of being constantly sort of misinterpreting men one way or another, or being swayed by them one way or another. So like it's almost as if the relationship made women, you know, be confused, whether by the taxi driver, you know, whether by a man who they don't understand, even talking about themselves. How do you kind of see this in your film, and how would you, you know, elaborate it maybe, and if you go into creating a longer version of this film? I think, I mean, for me, I was thinking, I thought in this one I want to have female leads in it. That was kind of slightly cut before the horse in that sense. I just thought I wanted to do that. There's a certain amount when you're writing a film where you're thinking, what can I make, and what's possible. And those two actors, you know, Ellie and Tash, are friends of mine, and they're very good. So I just thought, well, it'd be great to work with them. And so that was in the mix, and thinking about, well, who are these people in the back of the cab? So I wasn't trying necessarily to say something about, you know, female relationships with men in that sense of of always being sort of misunderstanding them. But I felt that, you know, I just felt it felt like more of just a general human point of how, you know, I mean, even us, like we look ourselves in the mirror and we don't understand, we don't even see ourselves as other people see us, because it's the wrong way around. You know, your face is the other way around, the way everybody else sees you. So you know, who actually, like you said, who actually knows anybody really that, you know, that well? And it then inevitably comes back to how much do you even know yourself. So that was kind of where I was coming from with that. And I think, but I do think, exactly, it does make you question, like, how much do you know? The things that you think are so secure or so obvious to you around you, that you might just go, okay, taxi driver, okay, you know, my friend Tom. But like, how much do you actually really know? Have you really looked, and have you got to know, you know, your friend really well, or have you just sort of bought what he's selling and how he's wanted to present himself? How much have you got below the surface? So that was the stuff that I was kind of interested in that. Does that answer your question? Is that like,
And I think that, again, that's the beauty of the short form, isn't it? That it's it enables totally different interpretations and totally different focuses that are dependent on the viewer.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And exactly, I was aware, like, even obviously working with the actors, you know, we were aware of, like, I did become aware as we were making it. I was thinking, yeah, actually, I don't want this to be all, actually, although it's a female-led film, which is what I wanted, because I generally find that more interesting, particularly nowadays. I've just grown up with male-led films everywhere, so I just find it so much more interesting when there's women on screen for the more of the film. And but then I realized, oh my gosh, am I making a film now really that's actually about this guy Tom, who's not in the car? So even though it's two women in the car, it's actually about a man all along. And
a little bit.
I suppose I can't really get away from that, you know. Fair enough, but it wasn't necessarily my intention, you know. But yeah, you know, fair cop.
So go on.
Well, I was just obviously this is going out, and other people who might not have had the pleasure of watching the film will be
the few people that haven't.
So is it? Can people see it? How can people experience about?
Well, it's not currently available, only because it's still on the festival circuit, going around film festivals. It has to be password protected. They don't want it to be publicly available online until they finish their festivals. So, right. Yeah, and again, because I put it, I should have been. I'm learning each time. I should have been even more strategic again with, like, just a short window of film festivals. But I did put it in for a couple that I just couldn't resist. Like, you just like, well, if you don't buy a lottery ticket, you never win. So I was like, okay, Rain Dance, I'll put it in, but that's not till like end of the year. So now it's like I'm having to wait a whole year. But I have done because I was going to do like family and friends screenings. I have done little online ones. So I was going to invite people to cinema or to somewhere to watch it. But I've done online ones where I've made a password available and people can watch them for a certain amount of time. So it's that kind of thing that I'm having, particularly with lockdown and everything like that. Having to do. And I think we were talking about that with Marguerite. Like, maybe we could.
Maybe we can do a kind of a make it screening or something and have tied into a Q&A about how women always misrepresent men or are misrepresented in films.
Yeah. Our poor men being misunderstood all the time. Maybe that is in my head. You should probably ask my wife.
I don't think we want to go there. Not on the internet. Anyway. or maybe it can turn into how important the sort of places like Brixton are for being able to hold films like this.
Yeah.
Talking about Taxi Driver, I remember the most sort of the most enduring memory of the first time I went to New York was, I can't even remember where it was. It was on the corner of some square, and there was like just in the periphery of the vision, there was like a kind of a few dubious, kind of sex clubs or something like that. Right. A yellow cab goes past, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the New York of Taxi Driver, and it was thrilling.
Yeah,
and you go now, and it's pointless.
No,
it's cool. It's kind of and how important creativity is to keeping that kind of feeling in somewhere like Brixton, or how important Brixton is to that kind of creativity.
Totally. It's the kind of grit. It's the sort of, it's the edge of, like, it's the kind of the coal face, or as it were, or like the gritty edge of like human interaction, existence. And everyone talks about Brixton being a melting pot, and that's what's so great, is all these different things colliding, and that is so exciting. There's so much in that, and that's going to make new and interesting and amazing things. And it's such a good backdrop for.
But also bringing to the surface another side of Brixton, in a sense, because nowadays, I mean, not now, obviously under lockdown, but you have a lot of, we've had tour guides leading hordes of newly arrived, European Americans, and they come and they only see one side of Brixton, but actually having the possibility of experiencing something else what you just said about New York, Charlie, it resonates a lot. Again, with Nights on Earth, you see aspects of Rome, or you see aspects of Paris that then if you go as a tourist, you're not really gonna feel in a way. You're not gonna taste. And it's really interesting to see the colors, the grittiness, the you know. Yeah. What is another part of Brixton?
Yeah, and that for me, why? Sorry.
No, go on.
That for me is why as well wanted it to be. I also, you know, with Mario, the DOP, and the colorist as well, a guy called Steph Colosi, like we really wanted it to be beautiful as well. So like it was not just like it is gritty and dark and sort of seedy and exciting and interesting and alluring and exotic, but it's also, I wanted it to not just be like the seedy streets of Brixton. I wanted it to still be, because I think they're beautiful, you know, because they're such a scary, amazing, you know, dark, exciting place, you know.
And that's something that kind of art and creativity generally can do, can't it? It can hold these kind of dualities in a way that real life often struggles with. There's a wonderful wonderful academic at the LSE called Nigel Dodd, he's their professor of sociology. And he's done a lot of, he's been a big friend of the Brixton Pound. Yeah, he was talking to us once about the which was new to me, the concept of a heterotopia. That's kind of it's a space of otherness, hetero as in otherness. And it has to have an element of technology. And it has to have something intangible, like sort of thought, and so like a film is a heterotopia. But the key part of a heterotopia is it has to have something that's not quite right, some grit in it, and that provides the kind of the compromise. So it's not utopia, it's not dystopia, it's this place of otherness, and I think that's something that I think Brixton is very definitely a heterotopia.
Yeah, totally.
And when you lose those things, you then become polarized, and you become this impossible utopia or this nightmare dystopia, and the story is always in the middle. Yeah,
totally.
An article by Zygmunt Bauman about this. He wrote on the back of a Tate Unilever big installation in the turbine hall by Volca. Do you remember? I don't know if you did see that the square where people walked in and it was all completely dark, absolutely incredibly beautiful. Wow. And Bowman wrote an introduction about this piece, talking about a sense of how the sense of otherness and sameness. How people always generally look for a neighborhood where everything is the same, where there is a sense of sameness. While in Brixton, we tend to do the opposite. We tend to generate and nurture the sense of otherness, and hopefully we'll manage to do that by more creative pursuits.
Yeah, I love that. I've written it down. I'm looking that up. Heterotopia. I'm going to read it.
I've got the book, and it's a really
heterotopias are good because they're possible as well. They're not sort of impossible things.
Surely they must be the only place really where people can actually then develop into truly who they really are. Then because none of us are one extreme or another. We're all some weird mixture in the middle that is completely unique and never been seen. And I think I personally believe we each have a sort of responsibility to ourselves to go after that, to become that person and to inhabit that. And I think if you put yourself in a place where it's homogenous and everything's the same, like a neighborhood, it's interesting you say that, because sometimes we've looked at, when we were looking for where to live, some of the places we looked, I was just like, I just can't live there because it's so boring. It's like, I want to live somewhere with something going on. There's light and
enough about Clapham though.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to anyone who lives there. But yeah. And that's the fight, isn't it, with everything that's happening in Brixton, which is so exciting, is I think it's so far it's keeping it, I feel like, but it's always that hope, like, oh, it won't get stolen, that won't get wrecked, that won't get gentrified out, that it won't get homogenized into.
It's really also up to us to the way in which things, because things change regardless of we want that or not. Progressively, they just change, and therefore it's up to us to make them change in the direction that we believe is.
Absolutely. The change is with us, not to us.
Yeah.
So what's next for Phil Dunn?
I've written another film, a short film. It's a longer short film, and it's, at the moment, the working title is Stupid Boy, and it's the sort of rough the sort of brief synopsis is, I've been saying the sort of tagline is "Love in a Time of Suicide Bombing," to give you a sort of sense of the kind of the sort of magnitude of stuff in it. But that's it. That feels even more. That just feels, again, it's just like the next story that's literally sort of come to me, that I just feel like I've got to tell this, and it and really enjoyed writing it, and just at the moment just filling out. I've done a sort of nearly final draft, but I'm just sort of filling it out to look at all just to make it rounded. So that's exciting. I don't know when or how I'm going to do it. I just don't know how yet, but I will. And then the other thing is talking with Theo, who we wrote this together, and just seeing, a lot of people that have watched About have said, what happens next? You've got to make it longer. Do something more with it. Like you said, you could turn it into a sort of Netflix thing or something. And so we're sort of looking at that and trying to figure out, there are definitely ways that we can go with it to see if we can make it longer. And I'm wondering, could we, because I didn't know, again, if it would do any good at the festivals, but it's so far it's won 12 awards, which is amazing, like unexpected again. And so it's made us think, maybe we could use it as a way of like pitching for something longer based on the characters in it, because we can say, like, this is a taster, and maybe we can use that as a way of saying, look, we've written a whole story off the back of this now, give us some funding and we'll make it. So that's what we're sort of looking at together at the moment, and a little bit difficult not sort of seeing each other, but to talk it through. But we've just been on Skype and stuff, and slowly fleshing out kind of where it could go, or even some of the backstory that leads into it, and just thinking about it further. And again, it's that kind of further exploration of this sort of this little group of Generation X's, and this sense of like, who has the whole picture, and actually, unless we start listening to each other, none of us do. We'll see.
That's really interesting. You can imagine it not even necessarily being longer format, just more short glimpses or something like that. That would be really interesting too.
Well, that's why I want to see Night on Earth, because it's kind of like that, isn't it? Sort of jumps from, and you sort of, it just
they're isolated stories completely. They do have this sort of underlying link between them, which is, we are all human and we all live nights on Earth. We all go through certain stories that are odd or sad, or just almost that they don't touch us, but they're still in our lives. It's like a small moment plucked from the sky. Really, I watched it a really long time ago. Possibly I was 18, and I've loved it. Absolutely loved it.
I'm wondering if, as I watch it, if I'll find out that I have, when you suddenly realise, but towards the end you're like, I have seen this, but I feel, is it a bit like Paris? Have you seen that on Paris Je t'aime? Have you seen that, where it's lots of, it's all based in Paris, but it's lots of little short films, all just done by different directors, but all connected. That's slightly different because it is different directors on each one, but it does kind of work as they're all brought together as an overall film. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and we'll think about what's the best way to treat it from here to make it into something maybe a bit more, to develop it a bit further. And part of that's it's also just me trying to figure out, where do I go from here? Like, how do I keep making films and not just have to like run a production company and keep that, I'm keeping that going at the moment, but I would like to get to a point where I could somehow get paid to make the films that I want to make. Surely that's a dream but again, it's like, well, if I don't sort of go after that, when will that become real? So and it happens one step at a time, doesn't it? So, and I'm hoping, and I will keep trying to link in with British film industry and just trying to say, hey, look, hi, I was at Barnes Film Festival a couple of weeks ago, and that's quite well known now, and had a film there, and I've got this other, just trying to sort of slowly persuade them to sort of let me in a little or work alongside. But I'm also kind of a bit like, how much do I definitely want to be right in the film industry? There's actually something kind of great about the freedom as well of like just being able to make exactly what I want. So I'm sort of trying to figure out how to do that without sort of just still making exactly what I want to make, and then but also somehow getting some money.
I've heard several times in the like the current context of obviously the arts generally is really struggling. Has been kind of maybe disproportionately hit, but then also heard that kind of view that maybe it's exactly what needs to happen because the kind of the old ways of doing things that are tied up in kind of history and privilege and things like that. If that gets taken down, then maybe it can reform itself, and
totally
maybe it's not the BFI becomes the kind of the Brixton film industry. Maybe.
Yes, very good, like that. Yes, let's do that. Let's set up the BFI. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing I think with the creative mindset. It's like, I mean, I've seen, and I've signed some petitions and stuff, and we want to like keep the arts alive and all that. But it's also underneath that. I mean, don't tell the government, but like the arts will never not be alive. Like that's the whole point, isn't it? It's like creativity. Just that's the, So there's a lovely poem by Adrienne Rich, and she says something about I put my lot in with those who make and make again in a world where such unmaking reigns. And I've thought about that line a lot. I read it when I was studying theology, and I was like, yeah. And then, but I thought since then I've written a poem sort of in response to that, which is called "Make and Make Again." And but for me, what I realised is actually it's not in a world where such unmaking reigns. It's not at the work. The unmaking doesn't reign. It's the making that reigns. The making is what comes back over and over again, no matter what happens. All these things fall apart and get torn down, and probably a lot of the time need to be. But the making, the people making stuff, the creativity, that creative life force that is in it, will always keep coming back. So that's what reigns. And I think the trick is to not be fooled into thinking, oh, this world is just being destroyed, or actually no, that we can make it again. We can make things that repopulate the world with good things, with beauty, with stuff that means something, that help us become, I'm like starting to sound like a sort of bohemian ideals, but that is totally what I believe. I think
completely.
So important.
That's brilliant. That's what a place to end up at the end of an hour. That's really cool.
Oh, thank
Perfect.
you.